Hi, it's WRTV's Ray Steele. I hope you like this video. In fact, I hope you will click that like button down there and click the subscribe button too so you don't miss the new stuff. Or you can click the subscribe button at the end of this video. Really appreciate it. Insiders are back, and a slightly different set of insiders today, at least a couple of them. We have one familiar face, Abdul-Hakim Shabazz, our libertarian friend from IndyPolitics.org. Arielle Brandy, Arielle, I'll get that right eventually, our Democratic contributor today, and Republican Whitley Yates, also joining us for the first time here on WRTV. Welcome to both of you, first of all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good to have some new faces among our insiders, as well as our old face, no offense. I'm
always good to be here, my friend.
I'm right there with you, my brother. Not a lot happening locally, politically. Yes, we did have at the beginning of a special session officially this week. We know that lawmakers still aren't coming back for another couple of weeks to actually begin work, presumably on more abortion restrictions here in Indiana. Abdul, what, if anything, have we heard? Have there really been any talks happening as to what kind of bill we're going to see, given that we just came out of a holiday weekend and probably there presumably was not a lot of politicking going on?
There has been some movement. Republican lawmakers met on the first day of the quote-unquote special session, once in July 5th. They met in caucus. I don't know the details of caucus, but I do know it was very civil, a very thoughtful conversation, a very meaningful conversation, because for a lot of these lawmakers, it's going to be the most important vote that they will cast. Now, exactly what the legislation looks like remains to be seen. Some lawmakers I've spoken with all tend to agree on the mother's life is in danger. They believe with that exemption. There are fewer exemptions for rape and incest, but still a lot of exemptions for those two. But some of the bigger questions are, the 20 weeks versus 15 weeks. What do you do about abortion pills? What do you do about penalties? Is it mom? Is it the doctor? Is it the Uber driver? There's still lots of things lawmakers are going to have to work out. And I would not be surprised if it starts in a special session, but ends up continuing when lawmakers come back in January.
At the same time as those discussions are happening, we saw an article this week, and actually this came in the form of an email from conservative attorney Jim Bopp, who is very prominent in Republican politics in the state. He was out with some model legislation, or what he called some model legislation, and there would be no week limit, according to this bill. It would be an outright ban on abortion, including in cases of rape and incest. The only permissible abortion would be to prevent the immediate death of a mother, where a delay would create serious risk of substantial and irreversible physical impairment of a major bodily function. Let's go to Republican Whitley Yates. I don't know what you're hearing on the side. Is it too early to discuss something like this, or is a proposal like what Mr. Bopp is putting forward, given that he does have some stroke within the party, is that something that could be viable once lawmakers come back?
I mean, in my opinion, all conversations right now are speculative language, because at this point, anyone that's producing anything doesn't have the weigh-in of the full legislature or their constituents. And so what I think that we're seeing is what other people want, as opposed to coming together and making decisions for all Hoosiers. So I think it's a little too early to go ahead and take Jim Bopp's proposed language to the bank and cash it. But what I think we'll see over the course leading up to this session is a convening of all stakeholders on all sides, coming together and making decisions that are best for Hoosiers.
Arielle Brandy, Democrats, of course, are opposed to any changes in the current abortion law. There have been lots of demonstrations happening in Indiana and around the country since the Dobbs decision came down from the Supreme Court. There's more planned this weekend as we are recording this. But of course, Democrats are in the extreme minority and really can't stop the legislature from doing pretty much anything it wants. What are you thinking right now, looking at what is posited as model legislation from Mr. Bopp, and the national conversation and the conversation that's happening in other states? I know House Leader Phil Giaquinta is among those meeting with the Vice President to talk about this issue ahead of other legislatures making decisions post-Dobbs.
Yeah, well, Whitley, you mentioned a good thing, taking a check and cashing it and taking it to the bank. I know this is also the time in which our legislators are supposed to be meeting to talk about global inflation and providing relief to Hoosiers in order for them to be able to have some kind of relief during this time. And that hasn't happened yet. But we did see that Holcomb and Bray and Houston promised that they were going to be speedy in delivering on that. And we're still waiting because the Republicans are debating on abortion access right now, in which we're seeing that majority of Hoosiers agree that we should still keep abortion legal in the state of Indiana. Now, these exceptions that are being provided are only provided for the mother. They don't have any exceptions when it comes to rape and incest. But we just recently saw that a 10-year-old was brought to the state of Indiana in order to be able to be serviced here. And that is very disheartening that at reproductive age, at 10 years old, if we choose to ban abortion in the state of Indiana, 1.5 million people are going to lose that access. So there are other things that we should be focused on when Hoosiers are hurting right now, needing to be provided other kinds of relief. Now, when we're looking at things on the national level, I mean, it's great to be able to see Speaker Leader Giaquinta going down to meet with VP Harris, because hopefully what we'll be able to see today as well is Biden is going to be addressing this issue. And we're going to be able to see from a national focus what the repercussions will or will not be for states like us, but also to people who are looking to seek these services. What's going to happen to them? Are they going to be prosecuted? Are they going to be able to travel across state lines in order to be able to receive the care that they need? Right now in Indiana, we're able to provide that care, and we should be able to continue to provide that care to people when they need it.
Whitley, what do you think will come out of the Republican conference? Not that you were a seer or anything, a psychic or whatever you want to call it, but given that, as Arielle pointed out, a majority of Hoosiers do not favor outright abortion restrictions, but at the same time, they have elected a supermajority of Republicans in the legislature. What do you think will be the line that is drawn? And I mean, because the governor has flat out said, as of right now, he doesn't have a red line as far as abortion legislation.
I'm going to be honest, I don't know what that line is going to be, and I don't really know if we can really speculate where it should be drawn. I'm going to be honest, I'm pro-life because I believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I believe that that is something that we value here in Indiana as a state. And with the supermajority that's Republican, I can expect to see that within the legislation very consistently. But there are nuances, as Arielle has spoken about, where we have to think about these certain and specific situations and how Hoosiers are going to be impacted. But the truth of the matter is, we didn't begin this session talking about Dobbs, as she pointed out. Right now, inflation is at an all-time high. We don't necessarily have any solutions coming from DC to help us with these problems. They seem to be consistently being exacerbated. If it's not at the pump, it's at the grocery store. If it's not at the grocery store, it's in every single aspect of our life. And so it is vital that Hoosier Republicans are focusing on inflation because that is hitting our pockets right now. However, it is really not a state's issue, this inflation. It seems like anything we do to mitigate inflation will be exacerbated by what's happening in DC, or what's not happening, I guess I should say, in DC. So I don't know if there's going to be an abortion line or if rape and incest and how that comes into play. But what I would implore Hoosiers to do is to reach out to their state representatives and to reach out to their state senators and to advocate and voice their opinions on what they would like to see, right? Because these elected representatives are supposed to represent our own ideas to the constituency. And so it is in my hope that everyone who is also standing and protesting outside is also sitting down and having meetings and building common ground with their legislators so that their voices can be heard, not only in protest, but in policy.
Speaking of inflation, Abdul, you mentioned that there had been some talks about crafting abortion restrictions. Has there been any other talk about the inflation relief? We know what the governor wants to do as far as providing direct payments to Hoosiers once the lawmakers come back. Have there been any other talks along those lines? Because as you said last week, there was some resistance perhaps among some Senate Republicans to some of the governor's idea.
Yes, and that Senate Republican opposition hasn't necessarily changed from what I've been told. What I've heard is that the issue is with the taxpayer refund. Right now, you only get the refund if you're a taxpayer, but there are about several 100,000 Hoosiers in the state that aren't taxpayers but also have income. Folks on Social Security disability, other sort of governmental type benefits. So the question is, how do you get inflation relief to those folks because they don't necessarily file taxes? Now the governor said it's real complicated. They may not be able to figure that out in a short session. Democrats are saying, hey, instead of talking about abortion, we need to be getting Hoosiers as inflation relief right now. And like I said, those Senate Republicans are worried about older folks and folks on Social Security and Social Security disability. So they still got a ways to go in that area too to deal with the issue of inflation.
As you said before I get back to Arielle and Whitley, there's been talk of gas price relief too. I know Democrats have long called for a suspension of the state's gas taxes. Indiana's average gas price is now higher than the national average gas price, at least as of this moment, which almost never happens. But at the same time, from the conservative libertarian economist point of view, you have always advocated that getting rid of the gas tax, even temporarily, is a bad idea.
Yes, because you still got your road repairs, road construction that you have to do, and inflation is hitting that road construction as well. Now, if I was going to suspend something, I'd probably temporarily maybe suspend the sales tax on gasoline, because those dollars go into the general revenue fund as opposed to the gas tax itself. So there's that. My thing is this: gas prices actually are starting to drop. They're down about they're like $5.25 last month. They're like $4.89 this month. Now, there's still quite a bit of money compared to what we compared to the past, but gas prices are coming down because of simple supply and demand.
Arielle, will Democrats continue pushing for gas taxes to come down or to be suspended or whatever might happen, given that, again, Democrats can't make that happen? The governor and most Republicans seem hard and fast against that. And what do you think personally of the inflation relief that's being offered by the governor, $225 checks per taxpayer as of right now?
Yeah, I think Democrats are going to continue to push it. I mean, they just recently met and presented the things that they think need to be happening. And it's something that has been on their minds that they've been pushing for a while now. And I think that that's something that they're hearing from Hoosiers themselves when listening to their constituents. So I think that it's something that they're going to continue to push for. The other thing that I will mention is that, I'm grateful for the fact that we are providing relief to Hoosiers in our state. But it's also, too, the same supermajority that said that the stimulus checks that were provided by our federal government were not helpful to those that were here in our state. And so to kind of see them being a little bit hypocritical on the side of now providing stimulus relief to folks, it's great. But the $225, as we know, is only going to get us so far right now in these times, especially when it comes to gas prices. And so we have to be realistic with the fact that we could be doing a little bit more with that $6 billion surplus in order to be able to provide some of our Hoosiers a little bit more relief. Like Whitley said, they're choosing right now between groceries and being able to provide gas to their vehicles to get to work and to the places that they need to go. Realistically, right now, a lot of us are hurting in many ways when it comes to the pandemic and everything that we've gone through. And so while this little relief will be able to provide some help, maybe for a week, I do think that our state could be doing a little bit more. We've seen other states across the country that are providing relief to their constituents in higher numbers. California is giving over $1,000 to people across the state, taxpayers, to provide them with the relief that they need right now. I think that that's something that we should be looking at and maybe being able to allocate those dollars a little bit better for us to be able to make it through these next couple of months if we're going to be continuing to see global inflation happen.
Whitley, there's a school of thought, however, and from some economists that have made this argument that the government stimulus, the federal stimulus that Republicans largely opposed from the federal government, may have contributed to this inflation by putting that money in Americans' pockets, and we didn't have the goods to spend it on, or the supply chain had not caught back up from being down during the pandemic. And there's also a school of thought that even this $225 that the governor is proposing would do the same thing. You're going to put money out there, and there might not necessarily be the goods to spend it on, thereby impacting inflation negatively. Why do you think we need that direct relief, or why are Republicans pushing for that direct relief when it could possibly make the problem worse?
Yeah, I just like to say we shouldn't be modeling anything after California. Like, let's not use them as a model. As a former resident who lived there and saw abject poverty on a daily basis and saw how they can go from a booming economy to a busted economy in like a month, that's definitely not something that we should do. I think that we have to be strategic about what we're doing here. I think the direct payments are to help Hoosiers so that they can spend the money on what they feel is necessary, right? And so if they're not driving and their issue is groceries, and they're able to dictate how they're able to spend those funds and how those funds can be used. But the truth is, the current administration has had an open checkbook policy on everything. We've sent tons, billions of dollars overseas when we needed to be focusing on what's happening here. And when you have an open checkbook policy, when you have supply chain issues, when you've just come off of a pandemic and you're not mitigating your spending in a way that's beneficial for your constituents, what happens is inflation tends to rise. And so here we are in a situation where we had these open checkbook policies from the current administration and some from the previous administration when it came to the pandemic. And so now we're reeling in the results of that. And so I honestly think that what Governor Holcomb and the entire legislature is attempting to do is just provide a little bit of relief, not a solution, just a little bit of relief, because the truth is the solution needs to come from Washington. It needs to come from the current administration. It needs to come from how they're governing, how they're leading, and how they're spending the money. And so until we really see that, we're always going to be downstream from their decision-making skills. And so if we don't have someone who's understanding the economy, how to utilize policies to best help people and make decisions that negatively impact its constituents on a consistent basis, we're never on a state level going to be able to out-policy that. It'll always be retroactive, and we'll always be looking for ways to mitigate. The $6 billion in surplus will be gone before we will be able to have any type of real change. And so I don't think that what we should do is just bust open the reserves and say, because of inflation right now, let's give everybody money in checks. I think we need to hopefully look at what's going to happen in November and how the people that we put into positions of power and that are elected to represent us will make laws, bills, and policies that directly impact us right now where we are.
Let's move on because we could stay on this and what Washington has and hasn't done for quite some time, given the divided nature of Washington right now. But very quickly, I want to go to Washington in our remaining moments and talk about the morale, if you will, again, among some Democrats, some unnamed, but this came out this week, Arielle, and I wanted to get your take on it. New York Times wrote that at a moment of broad political tumult and economic distress, President Biden has appeared far less engaged than many of his supporters had hoped. While many Democrats are pleading for a fighter who gives voice to their anger, Mr. Biden has chosen a more passive path, blaming Congress, urging people to vote, and avoiding heated rhetorical battles. Now, this comes, of course, after the Dobbs decision on abortion, and there were also some who questioned the forcefulness of his response to one of the most recent mass shootings, that in Highland Park, Illinois. Now, this could just be typical political chatter, anonymous political chatter that's showing up. We don't know, but it's out there right now. It was a slow news week, so it's getting some attention. What, if anything, do you think the president could have or should have done differently, say the day the Dobbs decision came out or in the days since then in response to Dobbs, the fight for abortion rights, and following the mass shooting in Highland Park or any other mass shooting that's happened since then?
Yeah, I think right now a lot of folks are obviously paying attention to what's happening nationally, but I do want to bring us back to here in our state because I think that that's so important. Right now, we are in the middle of our midterm elections here in the state of Indiana, where a lot of these national issues are hitting us hard right here at home. So when we're looking at legal access to abortion, we know that that's something that our legislature is going to be putting up. When we look at mass shootings, we know just last session and on July 1, you can now carry a gun in the state of Indiana without a permit. So we're permitless right now. And our Republicans didn't listen to constituents or our police officers when they came before the legislature and said, this will cause issues in our very own state, lead to mass shootings, And that was not the result of what happened. So now we have the opportunity and have had instances in which this has happened in the state of Indiana. And so a lot of these national issues that we're seeing on a higher level are happening right here in our very own state. So we can talk all day long about Biden and what he has and has not done for our country. But right here in Indiana right now, we're dealing with our own midterms where we have candidates that are running across the state right now that are talking about the issues that are hitting Hoosiers here close at home. We have great statewide candidates on the Democrat side that are running right now that are talking about those DC issues that are having an impact on us right here. And some of those things being, as I said, being able to keep abortion legal in the state of Indiana, being able to provide relief to Hoosiers right now during inflation, and then also, in turn, this mass shooting issue that we're seeing all across the country. But we're also seeing too here that in the state of Indiana, voter turnout is bottom of the bottom. We are one of the worst states in the nation right now that has a voter turnout issue. And we need to be focused on how we get people not only just engaged in the process, but also making it easier for them to be able to have access to the ballot. That's not happening here in our state. So we can talk about national politics all day long. We can talk about making sure that people get out to vote. Yes, we know that that's an issue here in our state, but we need to focus on what we can do here with our legislature that we have in order to make sure that Indiana is a place where people want to live and have a good quality of life.
Abdul, do we in the political media make too much of chatter like this? And
Yes.
Okay. Enough said. I know, seriously. I mean, because like I said, this seems like something we're talking about simply because there wasn't a lot to talk about this week, and so somebody decided to go behind everybody's back and say anonymously to the Times, "Hey, all these people are upset." Now, granted, it's happening at the same time that some members of Biden's administration are leaving. However, historically, that's not that unusual.
Exactly. It's a bit of a slow political news cycle. So it's not a slow news cycle because we had the Highland Park shooting this past week. But and politically speaking, it's more kind of a slow news week. So naturally, any sort of chatter or scuttlebutt gets amplified a little bit more. And plus, it happened with Joe Biden, it happened with Donald Trump, Barack Obama, Ronald Reagan, George Herbert Walker, George Bush, Bill Clinton. You always have the staff people who are always upset at the administration, say they're not doing as much or as well as they should be doing. At the end of the day, things work out the way they're supposed to.
Whitley, very quickly, since we talked about chatter within the president's administration, there's also been some recent chatter, and this was a New York Times article, that former President Donald Trump is actually thinking about announcing for re-election for 2024, not re-election, excuse me, announcing that he'll run again in 2024. And he wants to make that announcement perhaps as soon as this month. That would be something for a number of reasons. You have the January 6th committee hearing still happening. It's long before anybody else has even officially announced, though we think we know who is interested in running on the Republican side in 2024. But that also would be ahead of midterm elections, in which right now Republicans are projected to do pretty well. Are Republicans paying any attention to the chatter that former President Trump might jump in the race, and he might not give any warning to doing so? It might just happen any day now.
I'm going to be honest, no one knows what President Trump is going to do. So when these stories come out and people say, well, we've heard that this is going to happen, or we've heard that that is going to happen. The truth is, no one knows what he's going to do. I don't even know if President Trump knows what he's going to do, right? Or previous President Trump knows what he's going to do. I think that people will say these things, and there's a lot of rumors and conjectures. I mean, post-November, when the election was lost and Joe Biden became president, we all knew that he said that he was going to run again. So I guess I'm not surprised at hearing it, but knowing when an announcement is going to come, nobody really knows that. And I'm going to be honest, we are dealing with so much on a local level, on a national level, that it's kind of hard to really pay attention to what is going to be coming down the line. But I do think that hearing that Republicans are going to be winning and have been showing that they have been winning across the country is a testament to some of the cannon fodder that the politicos have been talking about, with being a little bit, upset with how the current president is leading. If people are upset with how Biden's leading, if they don't feel like their lives have been changed, if they don't feel like the soul of the nation has been restored, then what you're going to see is more Republicans not only winning in the midterms, but also a Republican president potentially taking the White House. And I don't know if it's going to be Donald Trump or of the slew of names that have been sprinkled into the atmosphere. But what I do know is, based upon polls and based upon what I'm hearing, people are not necessarily happy with how they're living right now. And they didn't feel this way in the previous presidency.
Fitting, I guess, that we end with a cannon fodder reference, since I started the week with cannon fodder and Star Spangled Symphony this past weekend. Our political insiders, Arielle Brandy, Whitley Yates, Abdul-Hakim Shabazz, thank you all for being with us. Appreciate it.
Oh, good to be here, Ray.
Yeah, thank you.